So we are still here with the amazing Oghenechovwe, and we're going to ask you some questions, my friend. So, what is the first story you wrote that meant something to you?
Uh, I mean, if I say that meant something to me, I would have to go really far back, but I'll just go a little bit not too far. That should be The Witching Hour. It's my first short story that was published that I got paid
Yeah.
for. It was published in Cosmic Roots and Eldritch Shores. It won the Noma Award for best short story by an African. So it sort of gave me the sort of allowance I needed or permission to do, all of this. It let me
Yeah.
know that I could. I mean, I always thought I could, but it writing that story, the whole process of getting it out there, published, the reception, the accolades, it sort of set me on this path, you know. So,
Yeah, like a big stamp that said you are a writer. That's very
yeah,
cool.
exactly.
We were talking about stories being life or death in the previous episode,
Yeah.
and like that, that really sunk home for me when you were saying it, and I think that this being the first one that you got published and got paid for, such an important moment. Um, did you how did you sort of know that you were on the cusp of getting there when that happened, or was it a surprise to you, or like had you been doing lots and lots of submissions for a long time, or like what was the context around you submitting and getting published with that story?
Okay. I tried dozens and dozens of venues, so I mean, I had no idea I could.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming from where I am, not a lot of people get on the international pro scene. So it was it was a surprise. It was a pleasant surprise, and yeah, it was the beginning.
It's the beginning of everything, and your list of accomplishments are so impressive. Does one of them mean more than the rest, or was it, or are they all a part of this journey that is your career of writing? And
Exactly. They are each of them my piece. They are a step in the ladder.
Yeah.
The world. Many people think of awards as superficial, but when you're coming from certain places where you're not likely to be seen or considered, or you're not going to be visible, right? And the value of your work is not going to be taken just for what it is. Sometimes it helps to have these markers of excellence that sort of shout you out to the world saying, see me, I'm here, so they've done that, they've carried me, they've been an important part of the journey, which you know yeah, I don't take for granted.
wow,
I
so
think that's
yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, would you to the people listening, would you have a place where you could recommend that the folks should start reading your work? Like, what any particular story they should start with, or anything like that?
This same story, The Witching Hour on podcast. Yeah, I'll just say search for The Witching Hour podcast. It's narrated there. It's my first story was reprinted and narrated there, so I would say, yeah, start there.
Fantastic. Right. So I want to put you in a scenario now, if that's okay. I want you to imagine
Yeah.
you're like you're running you're running through a field, and there's trees but open ground ahead of you, and above you a bright light shines, and you realize after a moment of consternation that it's actually an alien spacecraft, a UFO, and that light lifts you up and it transports you inside, and in front of you stands a small, sort of diminutive, grey little man, an alien, and he opens his mouth to speak to you.
Hello.
Yeah, what's up?
I like this guy. He's cool. So, I'm learning more about humans. I want to know. I can either probe you, or could you give me a book to better understand you?
Depends on how good your probe is and if you're willing to pay, but maybe we can skip that. The book might be faster. You should check out my upcoming collection, uh, Between Dystopias, The Road to Afropantheology. I might actually offer you great insight into the human um, origin and experience, early experience.
I love it when people answer with their work, because it is actually such a good answer, because this is something that you have created and worked
Yeah.
really hard on. So it makes a lot of sense that that is the best place to
Yeah,
start to understand you.
and it actually does touch on the origins of life and humanity, you know,
Yeah,
pantheologies, religion.
See,
absolutely.
I think this guy gets it better than a lot of the other humans I've abducted so far. That person gave me a book about wolves. Wolves are people.
Wolves
Or you're
are
bound to
people.
get lucky sometime if you adopt a lot of people.
You want to come to space?
We'll
Let's
see.
get out. Let's blow this planet. Let's get out of here.
Ooh, blow the planet. That'll take a while.
Actually, I think they are managing fine with the blowing by themselves.
You're telling me. Let's get milkshakes.
Yeah, much better.
So when you have when you've so say you've had an idea for a story, it's not going to be a shit story that you're going to turn into a phoenix. It's a story that is going to go the distance, and it comes to time to actually start working on it, to edit it. What is your editing process when you sort of knuckle down and work on a story?
Yeah, actually, it's still sort of the Phoenix method. I tell my stories usually in stages.
Yeah.
It starts out as a short story. I explore the idea, then it grows, it enlarges, and that's how my stories usually work. They grow in stages, like lava, pupa, you know, millipede, butterfly. You
Yeah.
know,
And
my my
how do
my
you know
story.
when something becomes a butterfly? How, like, is it just a feeling, or is there like a more tangible aspect that you
You
can point
just
to?
you just know,
You just
when
You
know
see
when
the
when
wings,
it's
man.
there, you know.
when the wings are there. Yeah,
Yeah, I have a short story, Ife Yoku. It was a short story. It was published in Selene Quarterly. It didn't make much of an impact, but I knew the seed of the idea was there. Then it became a novella, which was nominated for the Nebula Award. It won the Otherwise Award, it won the Nomo Award. It's one of the most celebrated novellas by an African speculative fiction writer. And it's grown even more. It's the first draft of my novel right now. So, and I anticipate it's going to have an even bigger impact than
Yeah.
novella did. So,
oh, that's
exactly
fascinating.
like that.
So it got published at every stage. Then it was a short story that
Yes,
got published. Then it got published as a novella, and then you're working on the novel now.
yes.
Oh, that's
That's
brilliant.
that, that's like a Phoenix Pokemon, isn't it? Like it keeps coming back, but like one step
Yeah,
bigger and more powerful.
Oh,
yeah.
amazing, amazing.
Oh, that's absolutely wicked, man. That's what a play.
That is an absolute play. I loved it. Um,
So
yeah,
obviously
super.
you are very inspiring. Like just hearing you talk about writing and about your, all of your work. But when it
Thank
comes
you.
to other authors, who brings inspiration to you?
A lot of them. There's Tendai Huchu, there's Wale Talabi, there's Chikodili, Emelumadu, you know. There's Cheryl and Tumi, you know, a couple others. You might
And
want to check. Yeah, there's Mamedian, there's Joshua Omenga, there's yeah. You might want to
and
pick
what
up one of my anthologies, Africa Risen. There's a whole roster of people there.
start people there? And what is it about these other authors that actually inspires you? So rather than it just being necessarily, amazing work by other people, but like, have you ever had one of those people that you've read something that they've done, and then that's directly translated into something that you want to do next?
Yeah, for most of these writers, it's how they explore, it's how they come across, how they come at African narratives, with
Yeah.
boldness, with a strength that that is not, it's not um often seen, yeah,
Yeah, um,
I like that a lot.
I like it a lot as well.
I think there's a real sense, especially talking about making anthologies with people, that there's a real like support network and a community effort happening here. And it sounds like all of you together are uh, doing something very important for African writing, which is making it more accessible for people
yeah,
outside. I think
exactly.
that should be fucking applauded.
And it has been.
It's yeah, well, yeah, and
Yeah.
and yours is frequently awarded as it rightly should be.
Yeah, thank you.
Hmm. So when either before when you're writing, in the sort of like drafting process, or when you're in the process of writing it, or afterwards, have you ever associated one of your characters in your fiction with music or a particular song?
Yes, actually, the weekend.
Oh, sweet.
A lot, yeah, a lot of my work is written to his music because it's daring, it's bold, it's audacious,
Yeah.
the kind of things you need to tell, the kind of stories I want to tell.
Do you have a particular like favorite track to write to?
Like, I have practically every song he's ever released, so
Yeah. That's
Just yeah,
I think there's a certain energy to his music as well that
yeah,
if you can translate that onto the page, like you say,
it's
he's
like
a
a
big people
vibe, it's
person.
brazen, it's
Yeah,
brazen is the word. Definitely. I mean, I actually completely slept on the weekend until he did do you remember he did the Super Bowl halftime show during the pandemic?
yeah. It was like 2020 or
Yeah,
21.
and I was like so starved of like sporting events and also like live music, and everybody was, and just to see this absolutely fantastic halftime show, I couldn't give a fuck about the football. Like that was the thing, and it was such a great, like he played like all of his like current and past hits, and the staging was really interesting, and the performances were great, and I was like, how the fuck have I not listened to more of this?
I,
And I have
yeah,
basically haven't stopped listening since then. Like
it's
it's on most of my playlists.
it's an interesting note as well. But as a musician, like to be able to give that level of performance without a crowd, because there was
Yeah,
no one there.
there was no one there.
They couldn't have people there. It was during COVID, and yeah, he just
oh
like
wow,
to have that much like energy and skill as a
that's it,
performer.
yeah. The Weeknd
Crazy,
loves to be
crazy.
lost in his art,
Mm.
and I vibe with
He's
that energy a lot.
vibe with that energy. Yeah, I mean, he like more recently he tried his hand at acting, didn't he? And my understanding is that didn't go too well. Like I think people didn't think it went particularly well. I haven't seen it, so I can't really comment on
I
it.
haven't
I
But
seen
think
it either.
He's too good a musician to be good at anything else.
He's too good at that one thing, so it makes him worse at other things, or just relatively not as good. Yeah.
I mean, he's got other stuff. Like he's really handsome as well. So maybe there's just only a certain number of boxes that you can have a tick in before they're like, no, you don't get to acts. You get to be the weekend, and that's it.
Yeah. No weekdays for you.
No weekdays for you. Oh, fucking A.
So,
Hey.
so now we know what you like in music. But when you're picking stuff to read, are there any themes that you like really are attracted to?
Yeah, actually, it requires in my work, what I write, what I read, what I watch. It's about power. Work that stories that engage with power, with
Hmm.
lack of power. Being in a place where there's no power, being in such a position. What the characters do about it, how they are affected by it. You know, the outcome of that, how it shapes them, how they resolve to obtain for them, how that affects them, the journey towards getting some, what they have to do, and when they either succeed or fail, how it affects them.
Yeah.
And when they succeed, how they utilize that power and, all of that. I'm heavily fascinated by it.
Power. Yeah.
I think it's the journey of a lot of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. It
It is, doesn't it? I mean,
shapes us.
even on a small scale level, like I would say I totally agree. Like as a theme, power is absolutely fascinating in any kind of media, I think. But like also just in life, like how many times have you encountered someone who uses what little power they have to fuck your day up?
Yeah.
Like people are obsessed with getting power and using it on other people at any point, and it can be positive, but a lot of the time it's negative. So it's really interesting to see the interplay and like who goes for what and how
Yeah.
they pursue it.
And it's one
Yeah.
of those. It's a thing that can be shifted very, very quickly by so many different, tiny little changes to the universe
Yeah,
can completely alter where power lies in a structure. But
Yeah.
also, it can be so difficult if you don't have power to change that. It's yeah,
Yes, it's a mountainous climb. It alters you, breaks you, it reshapes you.
yeah, very much so. Yeah, I think you see it in politicians quite a lot, don't you? You know, people getting elected on promises and then
It changes
ultimately,
everybody really. If you look at
yeah,
the grass to grace story, those people are never the same. It alters them fundamentally. The need, the consistency that it requires, all of that, you know.
yeah,
In a,
absolutely.
in a, in a lot of ways, it's my journey as well. It's my story, having come from, you know, a place where I've had little of that agency, having to try to wrest some of it from the world using storytelling, having to fight for a place, for my voice to be heard, having to try to, you know, keep my body in this world healthy, alive, by using the things that I can get from what little power and ability I can utilize. It's all our story.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm at church, man. Like like the way that you speak about storytelling, like it gives me so much energy. I really enjoy hearing you talk about this kind of
Yeah,
thing.
that's a
Great.
good feeling. Afropan theology.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're being indoctrinated.
I think you might have done it. I think you might have done it. I'm not. It's fucking phenomenal. It's so fascinating to hear you talk about this stuff. So like obviously that those are themes that you like pursue and appeal to you. But are there any tropes or indeed themes that you actually avoid in your own writing?
I mean, not really. I'm not really a conscious storyteller. I just sort of go with the vibe. I go with the flow. It's an
Yeah.
instinct thing for me. If it feels right, then it feels right. if I feel like my character needs to do this thing, if it's tropey, I don't care. You know, it's yeah, I sort of go by feel. So I'm okay with tropes. Okay with
Yeah.
And potentially when you're like rather than in your own writing, but like when you're reading other people's work, are there any tropes that switch you off that you're just like, oh, this is of no interest to me?
yeah, the typical yeah, the ones where the black guy dies early
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
yeah.
Um, wow, yeah, that I mean that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I mean, it's I mean, I'm thinking about sort of like I guess that immediately made me jump to like Hollywood, like the movie industry and this kind of
Yeah.
thing. Um,
Yeah, another thing that really puts me off is the this modern need for serial killers.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I fully agree with that.
You know,
It's especially, I think in a lot of cases, this is kind of glorification of like
yes.
somehow showing like look how
It
gross it is, as opposed to this
yeah,
person did something awful.
it's usually a straight white guy and yes, minorities and yeah, you know, women, people of color. Yeah, I find that a bit yeah.
hmm. Oh, that's absolutely fascinating. So the I almost want to dig into that a little bit more actually. Like where do we think that it comes from like a laziness in storytelling that people rely on
Yes, yes, it's laziness a lot of the times for shock factor. I'll use one
Mm,
example. House of Cards. Have you seen House of Cards?
I have seen
yeah,
the English version or the American.
The American version.
Yeah, I've seen the American version. I haven't seen the latest season, but I have seen the
Okay, yeah,
first.
no, the early season. I'm talking about the first season.
Yep.
yeah,
Frank was yeah, Frank was brilliant. Frank was analytical and Frank was necessary. He did exactly what was necessary to the exact degree was needed.
yeah,
Him killing that girl was such a lazy arc for the character. It was done purely for shock value. He didn't need to. It exposed him.
yeah,
It ruined his character.
Hmm.
It was inconsistent. Here's a guy who's never killed before, and he does it cold, without any hesitation. It didn't ring true. Also, it was a very wild move. Killing is such a juvenile act. He was a very sophisticated person as vice president. All his schemes were convoluted. His arc, making the vice president run for governor, that's such an impossible switch. Making he took he was built on cold, pure reason, necessity. That killing was it was so casual, it was gratifying. He didn't like her. You know, it was spiteful and small.
Hmm.
It
I
wasn't,
think
yeah,
it affects a lot of American TV, especially when there are shows that like when they kind of run out of the story to tell, and they just
yes,
make characters do things that you're like, why would they do that?
yeah.
That's
There's
so
a
unlike them from
there's a
everything we know so
thousand
far.
ways he could have removed her. He didn't need to. It wasn't just that it was brutal, it was unnecessary. He was one reporter. I could have discredited her 100,000 ways. He
Yeah.
just did that with a governorship candidate. It almost ruined the character. I think they struggled there to pick from then on to pick up the pieces of a beautiful character they shattered, because I feel that it was satisfying that need to just create a whole, yeah, white guy that kills women and, all of that.
you're 100% right. I completely agree with you. I loved that show, but that bit always struck me as a bit odd, and it creates a huge amount of problems for him.
And sorry, how many vice presidents are going around killing people in the streets on subways?
Yeah,
Do you know
yeah.
how hard that is to get away with for someone like him? No bodyguard. How much it exposes him to random surveillance, some beggar, someone with a camera phone. It's, it just didn't work for me.
That show, however, like still the moment that he gets into the White House, and um that previously, for the people that haven't seen the show, this is a character that's played by Kevin Spacey, who obviously has had all these allegations and huge amounts of legal trouble, and also like lots of people have said that they've been very hurt by him, and I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about his like acting ability. Kevin Spacey is a phenomenal actor, regardless of how heinous his character is as in a person. And during that show, he had this tick where he wore a signet ring, or like a class ring on his hand, and he would tap it whenever he said anything forceful to sort of demonstrate his point, to sort of emphasize the things that he said. And there's a bit in that show where he achieves his goal. He is in the White House. He is the at the presidential desk, and he sort of like smooths his hands over the wood, and then slams that hand down twice, really hard, and that's the end of an episode. And it's potentially one of the best silent bits of physical acting based around the character that I've ever seen. And it gave me chills, and even remembering it gives me chills.
Yeah.
Ah, what a show! What a
I
show!
mean, I mean, some people might argue that the actor's life is somewhat mirroring the character.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good
I
point.
mean, because I heard, I'm not sure, I've not been following it, but I heard he came out of all his legal troubles without a hitch.
Yeah, I think it took a few years, but my understanding is that he has been found not guilty in the various cases against him.
That sounds like the kind of dexterity the character would pull off.
100%,
I mean,
100%.
most people got distracted from the case because of that reporter that mysteriously died in the subway and no one knew what happened to her. So,
Oh,
right, I'm gonna end this episode of the House of Cards podcast, and I'm gonna ask, what's your next project, man?
Oh yeah, it's my novel. I'm working on it on the final draft. So yeah, that should be. I mean, before that, I have a collection coming out this month on 26th. My Afro Pantheology collection. Yeah, you can you can
Where
pre-order that.
where can people get that from?
Okay, you can get it from arcmanor.com/Africa. ARCMANOR arcmanor.com/Africa.
We'll tweet a link out for that as well, guys. So keep an eye on Twitter, and we'll make sure that you can
Okay.
get
All
that
right.
collection.
and I know we asked you this in the previous episode, but where can people go to keep up to date with your news?
Okay, yeah, you can check out my website, odekpeki.com, odekpki. Then you can follow me on Twitter at pen for writing, then prince_. I'm also on Instagram and Blue Sky at penprince, just pen and prince.
There we go. Well, I mean, to reiterate everything that I've been saying, but your insights on your own processes and what storytelling could and should be, on the distinctions between like stuff like pantheologies and mythologies, it's all been really seminal for me today, and I'd like to thank you.
Yeah, no problem. You're welcome.
Yeah, it's been so cool talking to you, man. Everything you've said has been just fucking interesting, for lack of a better word, so interesting, and I mean that as a massive compliment.
Thank you. Thank you. It was fun here as well, listening to your stories, interacting.
Yours too, man.
I'm glad. So definitely check out everything to do with our guest, and we will be sure to put in the links into the episode. So follow and buy the work, because stories matter. Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For rich ginger tones on their scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne, and for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?